Hi everybody, my name's Deanna and I'm an educator at the Virginia Living Museum. Today we're going to be doing two different activities about shapes and structures. In the first activity, we're going to test different shapes to see which are the strongest. Then in our second activity, we're going to move on to building a structure and then testing it to see if we can use those shapes from the first activity to make the strongest structure possible. Before we get started on our first activity, we need to collect a couple of materials. The materials we're going to need for the first activity are 3 sheets of paper, some tape, and then some books. I'm not quite sure how many books we'll need yet. It's going to depend on how strong the structures are that we build. So if you don't have that many books lying around your house, you can use other items to test your structures as well. The next thing we want to do is take our first sheet of paper, lay it out, and then we're going to turn it into a tube. We're going to do this by taking one short end, rolling it over to the other short end. And you don't want to overlap too much, just enough so that you can tape it. Then we're going to get a little bit of tape, put it along the edges, just enough to hold it together. And once we've done that, we have a tube. Our next step is to turn our second sheet of paper into a triangle. Now we're going to do that by making 2 folds on our paper. So I'm going to lay it just like this so I can make sure that the sides are pretty even. Overlap it and then just press down all at once. That's going to give us the 3 sides we need to make our triangle. Once I've done that, I'm going to open it up, take these 2 edges right here, and tape them together just like we did for our tube. What we're doing is creating different shapes so we can test their strength. So we have a tube, we have a triangle, and next we're going to learn how to make a cube. All right, now it's time to make our last shape. And our last shape is going to be a square. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my paper, fold it in half, open it back up, then fold each side towards the middle. And then when we unfold it, that's going to give us the 4 sides that we need to make our square. We're just going to take those 2 open edges, tape them together, much like we did for our tube and our triangle. And once we have that done, we have our square. So now that we've made our shapes, we should have 1 round tube, 1 triangle, and 1 square. Now we're going to move on to testing them. The way we're going to do that is take 1 shape at a time. I'm starting with my square, and then we're going to stack books on top. Once the shape can no longer support the books, if it collapses or it breaks, that's as many as it can hold, and that's going to be our final count. So here we go. Book number 1. Oh no! So my square held 1 book kind of just for a minute, but it couldn't hold very long. So my square is now done because it couldn't hold everything up. So the square didn't even really hold 1 book. All right, now let's move on to testing our triangle. So I have my triangle ready to go. I'm going to put my books on. Oh, my triangle didn't hold 1 book either. Not going very well. So we will see how our circle does. Okay, now it's time to try our circle. So we're going to put it right here in the middle, and we're going to gently place our books on top to see how many it can hold. 1 book, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books. So if you had to guess right now, which of our shapes would you say is the strongest? If you said what was a circle, you're absolutely right. The circle is the strongest out of the circle, the triangle, and the square. Let's take a look at our shapes. Our square shape has 4 corners. Those 4 corners can actually be weak spots. The triangle had 3 corners, so it had weaknesses too. But our circle, even though it's pretty bent up right now, didn't really have any corners, did it? So if it's perfectly round and it doesn't have corners, it doesn't have those weak spots. So the circle is a more stable shape for us to build with. Now that we've learned about the strength of different shapes, let's see if we can test it by building some unique structures. First, let's gather our materials. For this next activity, you need some paper. I'm using 3 sheets, and then you need a couple of things to hold that paper together. I'm going to be using 4 paper clips and 4 pieces of tape today. Then I'm going to be using pennies to measure the strength of the structure that I build. If you don't have paper clips or tape, don't worry. You can use anything you find around your house. Just try to make it a little bit of a challenge by limiting what you can use. So don't use all of the tape on the roll. Just use a couple pieces to see what you can make work. The goal of this activity is to build a structure using any shapes that you like, and then we're going to see how strong it is by putting pennies on top. So that means that our structure can't sit flat on the table. It needs to be elevated or raised up just a little bit. So make sure you leave a little bit of space underneath of the main part of your structure so that we can see when it breaks and falls and can't support the pennies any longer. I'm going to start putting together my structure with my 3 pieces of paper, my paper clips, and then I'm only going to use 4 pieces of tape. I'm going to speed mine up so that you can be creative and come up with your own idea. Remember, everybody can come up with their own option, and then you can test them all together to see how strong the different shapes and structures are. So I've built my structure, and I made sure that the place where I'm going to set my pennies isn't flat on the ground. Because if it's flat, then it's not going to be able to tell us how much weight it can support. I went with 2 circles and a square on top, so let's see what happens. I'm going to put it back down on the table and place pennies on one at a time until it completely collapses. Let's see how we do. When I was testing my structure, I was able to place 36 pennies on top before the structure collapsed all the way down to the table. That tells us that it wasn't able to hold up the weight of the pennies anymore. Try yours at home and tell us how you do. You can even send us a picture or a video so we can see how it went. Thanks so much for joining us today for our 2 activities testing the strength of shapes and structures. Be sure to send us a picture or video, or even just a message to let us know how it went at your house. We hope you can join us again soon.